So what you saw in the video, me doing the sanding, was I went around the entire chassis. I basically smoothed out any issues that I could find. There's a little bit of schmutz in here. Let me get that out while I'm looking at it here. I went around the edges, the inside and the outside of the chassis, in here in the pod too. Make sure all that's nice and smooth. Polish that up really nicely. It's great plastic. And then I polished the pads. Make sure you can see them here. I'll move it a little closer. I polished the areas, the little pads where the pod sits. So when you put it in there, it's going to sit nice and flush. It's going to sit nice. It's going to be nice and smooth when it moves. When the pod goes in, you're going to get a real nice smooth area for the pod to move on the chassis. And I'm not going to take the motor out because it really feels like it feels nice and smooth. The standard gearing for this car is what I'm just going to go with just to start, because it felt good enough on Clem's track. And I want to really limit myself in this project to just kind of the car as it is. The only difference is the screws that I'm going to use. And I ordered some different screws because I realized that these are a little too long. The shaft of the screw is a little too long. So I ordered some of the shorter ones. These are the 8mm ones, the CH51s. And I think it's CH53 coming. The guys at Slot Car Corner are going to send me those. And those are going to replace the body screws, the 3 body mounts, as well as the screws for the pods. You can see the difference. The screws for the pod and the bodies, the body screws are just a tiny bit longer than these, but obviously they have, the threads going the whole way up, and that catches the edges of the pod. As I showed you in the first video, you could kind of hear it grinding a little bit, and that's normal. But for this project, what I want to do is, kind of tune the car and make the car the best that I can get the car to be, with as few changes to the car, with few parts changes to the car as possible, because I really don't want to, change everything. I just want to make this car the best I can do it with just what I have here, except, of course, for the parts, for the tuning, and then the screws. And that's really it. And we'll go from there, and we'll see how that goes. And I think it should work out pretty well. Remember to turn your mic on, folks. So back at Clem's, and I got the car tuned up a little more. Got the screws put in, and I'm going to have a link for the screws that I got at the bottom, right under the video here when I post it. So I get some nice float in the chassis, so I'm getting some side-to-side play, and I'm getting some back and front. What I did figure out, though, I think, is that the pod, or rather the wires, hit the bottom side of the interior, because with the body off, I'm getting nice up and down float on the chassis, but with the body on, I'm only getting kind of side-to-side and back-to-front play. So, and this is also with the body tight. And normally I loosen the body up when I'm tuning something. So I wanted to try the body tight. I just did a bunch of laps, and the best one I got was a 6.9. The other day when I was here, I had gotten a 6.8. And now it feels like the nose is lifting out a little bit. So I'm thinking it's getting a lot of forward bite, getting a lot of grip, because it's putting a little more power down. So I'm going to try now with a looser body and see if I get a little more pod float and see if the lap times improve. Okay, so we got the lap times down from about consistent 6.8 to a consistent 6.7, or sorry, a consistent 6.9 to a consistent 6.7. So the car is definitely a lot more drivable. I got my fastest lap also dropped down from a 6.8 to a 6.6 on the track. It definitely feels like a much more drivable car, one that I would really consider for kind of a go-to GT car, for a GT, kind of an open GT class. It's a real consistent car. And really the only thing I really did to this car, again, aside from the sanding around the chassis and around the pod, was I changed the screws. I'll have a link in the bottom for the screws again. Loosened up the front axle, the side-to-side play, loosened up the body, so there's definitely a little bit more body float on the chassis, and we got that nice pod float now with the pod. I also rerouted the wires and took out the quick disconnect, and I mean, all these things together has definitely made it a more consistent car. Clem dropped, just a little tiny bit of lead up here in the nose. There's a little bit almost under the front axle, and then a little piece that goes kind of directly away from the guide, but not very much, just to keep the nose down, because it felt like the amount of mechanical grip that I was getting, it really needed to have that little bit of lead in the nose just to keep the nose down. So it's a really consistent car now, which is really what you want, especially for a club racing car. I think this kind of wraps it up for this car, for this tuning series, because I wanted to just see how far I could take this car with just a minimal amount of tuning. I probably will do a little more tuning on it. I may put a spring suspension on this that Slot It makes, not the magnetic suspension. The magnetic suspension, I've found, I've had inconsistent results with it, but the spring suspension gives me a nice soft float in the pod. And on a track like this, which is kind of like a track like the real track Sebring, where it's a fast track, but it's fairly bumpy. There's on the corner out, there's some bumps in the track here, where if you really get on it, the car loses contact and the nose comes out, and then it just slides to the outside of the track. But it's a really good, consistent car now. And like I said before, I think this is a really great place for hobbyists to start if you're thinking about getting into the slotted types of cars. Because, I mean, this car, it's real easy to drive. When you get it tuned up the way you like, you can really put it exactly where you want. And I think it's a lot of fun. So I wanted to thank Clem for, Clem's down here. Y'all can see Clem. There he is. Warrior Run Loco Works. And I wanted to thank Slot Car Corner for the screws and the encouragement to do the series here. And I really appreciate it, guys. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you in the next video.